Testing, testing, testing. Did it pick up?
Try one more time.
Testing, testing, testing. Yeah?
Well, there's two, the visual and manual. I think once you get
All right, should we do? Oh, that's pretty good. That sounds good, right? Loud enough? Okay, great.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rabbi Debbie Steele. I'm the Associate Rabbi here at Temple Solel, and I wanted to welcome all of you. We always love it when we get to partner with the Bureau of Jewish Education, with Myra Schindler, and all of the BJE staff. It's such a wonderful group. I was going to tell you, before I came to Phoenix, I was in Topeka, Kansas, which did not have a BJE or any other agency, and it's so nice to be in a community that has all these agencies that support each other and work together. And this program, the Passages program of lifelong learning, is so important. So thank you all for being here today. I'm very interested in this topic. I think it should be a very interesting talk, and I know that this is the first of the Passages series for 2026, so hopefully you'll continue to come to many more. I suppose I should just tell you one bit of business, which is that there are bathrooms at Solel. If you need them, if you just go down the hall here and make a right, you will easily find them. So welcome. We're so glad that you're with us, and I want to invite up the BJE President, Steve Ferentz, to introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Rabbi. See a lot of familiar faces out there. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the opening day of the 49th season of the Bureau of Jewish Education Passages series. Anyone here for the inaugural event? If I do the math correctly, it would have been around 1977, so quite a number of years ago. Like many of you, our family have been BJEers since we landed in Phoenix more than 25 years ago. As youngsters, our three kids were heavy users of Hebrew High and Caravan. As young adults, they graduated Marriage University, which is a warm-up to Baby University. And I'm sure many of you participate in classes and programs making up the many cornerstones of this remarkable institution. Some of these are beginning next week, I think, right, Myra? We have some programs beginning this week and next week. Like all nonprofits, we depend on you, our participants and supporters, and on behalf of the Board of Directors, thank you for your financial support throughout the years. We hope you will continue to keep the BJE in mind, and for your convenience, rather than passing a plate around, we've included a QR code in today's program. Before introducing this season's opening speaker, Rabbi Benay Lappe, I want to assure you that despite the title, The Crash Course, there will be no actual crashings here today. No need to grab your phone. No airbags would be deployed. You won't have to call Morgan & Morgan, Sweet James, or the husband and wife law team in the hopes of some large settlement. The Crash Talk is a powerful and surprisingly hopeful way of understanding moments in Judaism's history. I was fortunate to hear Rabbi Lappe speak last summer in Chicago when I attended the biannual conference of the Federation of Jewish Men's Clubs. I immediately recognized Rabbi to be one of the most original and compelling Jewish thinkers of our time. Rabbi is president and Rosh Yeshiva of Sfara, a traditionally radical yeshiva in Chicago. Show of hands. Has anyone here ever imagined the word radical in front of a yeshiva? The word yeshiva? I don't think so. Rabbi Lappe was ordained by the Jewish Theological Seminary and has taught at a wide range of institutions, from rabbinical schools to major universities. Along the way, she was named to the Forward 50 list of the most influential American Jews, as well as their list of most inspiring rabbis. Rabbi Lappe is also the recipient of the Covenant Award for Innovation in Jewish Education and has been recognized nationally as a leading voice shaping the future of Jewish life. So I invite you to buckle up, intellectually at least, and join me in welcoming a teacher who will help us see that crashes are not the end of the story, but often the beginning of something far more interesting. So direct from the Windy City, please welcome Rabbi Benay Lappe.
Thank you so much, Steve. Thank you. There's nothing better for keeping your head from getting big than seeing old friends, friends who knew you when you were in diapers, right? And even before. So I am so excited that in the audience today are two old friends who have known my family and myself since before I was born. I'm so honored to be your kickoff speaker for this series. Thank you so much for having me. What I'd like to talk about today, how's my sound doing? It's a little coming in and out, right? It's okay? All right. The big question for today is, what time is it? Not this time, but if it's true that we've always been here before, and I'm not sure that's true, but it's a working hypothesis that we're going to have, that there is nothing new under the sun, and I didn't come up with that, but that we've always been here before. If that's true, it helps to know when exactly. What time is it now? On January 6th, 2021, was that 1776? Or was that 1781? Is this 1939? Is this 1948? What time is it? That's our question. Okay. I'm going to start with a story. It's something that happened to me on the first day of rabbinical school. It was 1991, and the freshman rabbinic students were being greeted by the president of the seminary, and there was going to be a luncheon in our honor. Well, we were all gathered, and he was late. And he arrived finally about a half hour late, and he said, "I'm so sorry that I'm late," but as I was walking out of my office, the phone rang. And I picked up the phone, and it was, and he named a very prominent American sociologist, a sociologist of the Jewish community. And it was a friend of his, and he said to his friend, who had been tasked with analyzing the results of the 1990 National Jewish Population Study, the first survey of how are we doing as a Jewish community, the results of which had not yet come out. And he said to his friend, the sociologist, well, what's it going to show? And the sociologist, his name was Stephen Cohen, said, well, there's good news and there's bad news. Good Jewish answer, right? The good news, he said, is that Judaism will exist in 100 years. The bad news is that it will be unrecognizable to us. Okay, this is my first day of rabbinical school, and I feel like I've signed on to the Titanic, right? I mean, I had grown up Jewish. I had fond, nostalgic memories of Jewish life, and I was becoming a rabbi because I loved what Judaism looked like. And here I'm being told that that's going to be over. And I was upset. I was worried. And then I began to learn Talmud. And I came to understand something that I would like to share with you today. And what I'd like to share ultimately is why this one queer, fringy, radical, hippie person does not think it's actually bad news that Judaism is going to be unrecognizable to us in, well, how many years ago was that? 30, right? In 70 years. For the next hour, we're going to have a back and forth. This is not a lecture. It is what I hope will be a conversation. So I invite you all to participate. Raise your hand or don't raise your hand, just holler out. Questions, comments, objections, thoughts. Okay? You willing? Yes? Okay. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Here we go. I'm going to begin with a hypothesis. My first hypothesis is that all human beings share the same basic, big questions of life. No matter when you were born, no matter your gender, your sexual orientation, your religion, your ethnicity, your race, your nationality, all human beings share those big human questions. Okay? Audience participation part starts now. What are they? The biggies. Why are we here? How can I be happy? What are we supposed to do? How can I be safe and secure? Why do bad things happen? How can I help? What should I invent? How should I invent? I love that. How can I make it better? What can I do? What can I make?
But it also is, you're saying that everybody,
All
all human beings,
human beings.
but not necessarily, because certain human beings, and we don't want to say what religion or whatever it is, have a different idea of, I can't be happy if they are here, or I can't be, this is...
Okay, but now you're talking about the answers, and I agree with you. I still think we have the same questions, but we all have different answers. So let's start with hypothesis number one. We all share the same big questions. I'd like to suggest that every religion, every civilization, every society comes into being for one and only one reason: to answer those basic human questions. And just as you say, different societies, different religions come up with different answers to those questions. And your tradition, your religion, your civilization, your society's answers, I'm going to call master stories. Okay? We all come up with master stories to answer those basic human questions. And if your master story is working for you, you're not even aware that you have questions. You don't walk around asking, why am I here? You know. Your story tells you. You don't walk around asking, is there a God? You know. Your story tells you. You don't walk around asking, what's important? Why am I here? All the things you said. If you're Jewish, that master story is called Torah, writ large. That's Torah. That's the name of our grand collection of answers to the questions, why am I here? What does it mean to be a human being? What's right, what's wrong? All those questions that you named. And by the way, I have never once had to prompt a group of people to answer what are the questions, because I think it is encoded in our DNA to have them. It's what it means to be a human being, to have these questions. Okay. Again, if your story's working for you, you're not aware of your questions. But hypothesis number two. Hypothesis number two. Every master story will ultimately and inevitably crash. Crash, crash, crash. What do I mean? One of three things will have happened. Either A, you find another master story whose answers you like better. Crash. Or some historical event out in the world has happened that makes your story's answers no longer workable. Crash. Or something inside of you has changed. You're different. And what you thought was true no longer seems true. Crash. Yes?
There be another reason for the crash, such as you're absorbed by the larger society around you? It's not a big conscious decision, you just sort of get absorbed.
Okay, the question is, could there be another reason for the crash? Namely, you're absorbed in another. Can you give a specific example?
Well, the Jews in a Christian society,
Yeah.
many of them
Yeah.
Christianity not for some deep thought, but because everybody around them is Christian.
Yeah. So, for example, when you assimilate or assimilated into a surrounding culture, isn't that a crash? Yeah, it is. And I would say that that is an example of the first kind of crash, where you come into contact with another master story, in this case, Christian culture, Christian ideas and values, some of which may be more attractive, may make more sense. You go, I like that. I'm going to do that.
My point is that for many of the people that follow that route, it's not through some deep thought, it's more by happenstance.
Oh, absolutely. And by the way, I'm not suggesting that this process is conscious. Actually, I'm doing this talk because I think the process is largely not conscious at all. And I'm here to say, what What might happen if we were conscious of the choices we were making after a crash? Might we make better choices? Might we be less reactive out of fear and a desire to hold on to something which is no longer hold on toable? How you respond to a crash will determine the kind of life you're going to lead, the kind of person you're going to become, and the kind of world you're going to create. So it matters very much how we respond to crashes. And most of us respond without consciousness or thought. Yes?
Are you using crash in a negative sense? Is that
No, I'm not, actually.
use the word change?
Absolutely. Or, I was about to say growth, but a crash isn't necessarily growthful. It is the impetus for what could be growth, but isn't always. It depends how you respond.
But it's always a change.
It is always a change, and I'd go even further and say it is always a loss. There is always going to be loss after a crash, by definition.
Then we are using it in a negative sense.
No. Hey, I lost a bunch of weight. I'm super happy about that. In other words, loss isn't always bad. Loss, what I mean by loss, it can be the loss of how I thought the world was. But gosh, am I glad to know that it actually isn't that? It's better than that. Or the loss of something that was not good. But there is always loss. Yes?
So this is, after that comes the good old days.
Ah,
Go back to the good old days.
thank you. Thank you. If I did not plant her there. But, okay, so she said, after that comes the good old days. Yes, that's a very natural response. Make America great again. Yes, the good old days. And we're going to call that option 1, because I am going to posit that there are 3 and only 3 possible responses to any crash ever. 3. Actually, before I go there, let me give you some examples of crashes, yeah? Pieces of our master story. By the way, America has a master story. It's called the American Dream. Your family has a master story. Every organization, every school, every community has a master story of their group. Okay? And they lived happily ever after. Okay? That's part of our sort of Western canon, right? Of how we see ourselves in relationships. Divorce. Crash. May you live to be 120. The death of a child. Crash. And God created the world in 6 days. Carbon dating. Crash. All people are straight, heterosexual. Oh shit, I'm a lesbian. Crash. You get the idea, right? Okay. The good old days. Let's look at those 3 options for how you can respond to a crash. Option 1, you deny the crash. You say, no, that didn't happen. And you revert to your master story. And what you're going to do, likely, is to build a wall around that master story so no other inconvenient truths get in. Okay? This is the path of denial. And you're going to take in that master story for all sorts of good reasons. What are the good reasons to go option one after a crash? Every option is going to have its upsides and downsides. Upsides? It's more comfortable. It's familiar. You know it. You have a place in it. Your people are there. It's very comfortable. We are creatures of habit and we want to be comfortable. Big draw.
You not only know it, but you know it's right.
Ah, okay. He said, you not only know it, you know it's right. I'm going to say, after a crash, this option is suppressing the extent to which it's actually not right. There's some element, at least, some significant element of it that isn't working. That is the crash. Maybe you like a lot of it. Okay, fine, option one. What else is the upside of going option one?
Requires no change.
Yes, requires no change. Whew. Change is hard. Change is destabilizing, upsetting, and I don't have to change. Yeah, I get to hang on to my community, get to hang on to lots of goodies. A lot of things stay the same, and I'm going to be not paying too much attention to this thing over here. Yeah, yes. What else? It's easier. It is so much easier in a lot of ways.
What if you want to go back to make the change? To make a change?
Yes, you can. You can. You're asking, can you go from option one to a different option?
You want to go back? Oh.
Is
Change the culture, change the policies, change the...
sit tight? We're going to call that option 3. That's a different option. Option 1 is not change. Option 1 is suppressing awareness of what has crashed and reverting to the master story and defending it to the death.
What about questioning? You know, like, I look at my personal life, I had my own story, I left it, and then rather than going back, I questioned.
Yeah. Yeah, you're also on the 3 train. We're going to get there. We're going to get there. I'll tell you an option 1 story. When I was in rabbinical school, all of the students had to spend a year in Israel for our studies. And that year, this was 1993 or so, there was a dairy company that had a great marketing plan. And their marketing plan was to put little diagrams of dinosaurs on their milk cartons with little factoids about different dinosaurs. You know, Tyrannosaurus rex, 5 million years old, and ate this and that. Okay? Why do they do that? Kids love it. Yes, Mom, buy that one because I want to look at the dinosaurs when I'm having my cereal. And then what happens? Mom buys the milk and says, the kid says, Mom, what year is it? And the mom says, 5773. What does that mean? Oh, God created the universe 5,773 years ago. But it says the Tyrannosaurus rex is 5 billion years old, or million years. Crash. You know what happened to that milk company? This is a dairy company. The Rabbanut was the rabbinic governmental body. Still exists. One of their jobs is to certify kashrut, right? The kashrut of milk companies, butcher shops, you name it. And the Rabbanut said to this dairy company, either you take the dinosaurs off the milk cartons, or we're pulling your kashrut certification. That is a classic option 1 move. Why do they want to do that? Because you don't want your story crashing at the breakfast table, right? The Jewish story of how old we are and how we came into being and God's role in the universe is crashed by dinosaurs. And the dairy company took the dinosaurs off the milk cartons. That's what you do. That's an option 1 move. Get those dinosaurs off the milk cartons.
Is the crash always that black and white, or might it be a shade of gray? And if you work a little harder at it, you can reverse whatever the situation is.
We have so many option 3 people here. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. All right, let's take a look at option 2. Option 2. Crash happens, and you acknowledge and accept it. You say, yeah, shit happens. That happened. I'm not going to deny it. But because I accept that it happened, I'm going to completely reject my master story. And you always live in a story. It behooves you to know what story you're living in. Option 2 is you jump off of your master story that has crashed, and you jump into a new story of the crash material. That's the story that makes sense to you. What are the upsides? Oh, we forgot to do downsides. What are the downsides of going option 1? We had a lot of upsides. It's familiar, it's easier, it's comforting, it's comfortable. You get to hold on to all your goodies. You get to keep your kashrut certification. Yeah, not good for the dinosaurs, not good for the kids. Okay, what are the downsides of going option 1? It excludes people, big time. Part of what this wall is about is making sure people who have different beliefs or are going to threaten my story stay out. Your kids don't play with those kids, you don't read those books, you don't go to those movies, you don't let them in your neighborhood. There's a lot of that. What else? Downside. Say it again.
You become stagnant. You don't move forward.
Yes, stagnation. Option 1 is the opposite of growth. This is not a growth paradigm. This is a stay the same, preserve. Preservation is a big value for option 1 people. And P.S., I am not telling you that any one of these is bad. On the contrary, we're going to have 3 options. You actually want some people to do all of them. People who preserve things, people who want to keep things the same, sometimes preserve really good things that you think aren't good, but if you spent more time thinking about them, you'd realize, oh my God, that was actually really good. Yeah? Okay. Again, downside of option 1. Say it again.
You lose authenticity. Like, what if your kid asks you about dinosaurs and you're like, no, and then the person looks at the science and then you dismiss everything your mother ever told you.
Yeah, there's cognitive dissonance. There's a lot of denial going on here. Yep, absolutely.
I'm assuming that when you were in the seminary at that point, they didn't know you were gay.
Correct.
You wouldn't have been accepted at that time.
Correct.
That was one of the crashes that happened to the conservative movement of JDS when they started accepting gay females first and then gay people.
100%. In fact, my life as a queer person is really, and I'll go personal on you in a few minutes, and I'll tell you about that crash in my life and how I went option 1 and option 2 and then option 3. And that background is what allowed me to see that it's not just people who experience crashes, but societies and traditions, and we've been here before, and we have a whole system for responding to crashes. Yes? You become obsolete. So you stagnate, you stop growing, right? Yeah. You can become irrational. That's really interesting, and I think you're onto something. The drive to reconcile, to stay, like keep your sanity here, can mess you up. And not only that, over time, those forces of somehow we have to keep explaining that this makes sense, perverts, twists, distorts the master story itself, and it causes it to be worse and worse and worse. Yeah.
Do you think that leads to some sort of cultish behavior?
Yeah. Does this lead to some cultish behavior, Steve asks. Yeah, I never thought about that, but there does seem to be something familiar, right, in the way cults operate in this, what I'm calling option 1. Yeah. I need to think more about that, but I think you are also onto something. Isaac? Yes.
Thank you for the segue in the cultish behavior. I often engage in debates because we read the Torah and we read what we want to read, not what the text says. There's nowhere in the Torah that it says the world was created in 6 days. The sun was created on the 4th day, so there's no way to count a day until the 4th day. The first 4th day could have lasted 5 trillion years of all we want. So there's no contradiction, but we are so stagnating in that. And second, Torah was written as one string of letters with no separations. So we are so used to say, it says Bereshit bara, wrong. If you chop it differently, barosh itbareh. At first, it will be created. It's not even a past tense, it's a future tense.
Okay.
We're so focused on what's...
You are embodying option 3. Okay? I hate to give away the end of the story, but we come 2,000 years into a very long and used to be healthy, isn't anymore, unless we fix it, tradition of option 3. And so let's get to option 3. Okay, back to option 2. Option 2 was, yeah, that happened. If my story cracked or crashed, the whole thing must be a crock. So I'm throwing the whole thing away. And I'm going to jump off into a new story. What's the upside of that? What's the upside of taking that tack? Right. Less aggravation. You chuck it. You chuck the whole thing? That's easy. Right? We thought this was easy. This is also easy. Okay. Upside, it's progress. This story is working for you.
You might pick and choose some of the old stories, but adapt them to a new story.
Again, option 3, we're coming there. We are coming in for a landing.
I don't know that I agree that
Yeah.
I think, because of whatever that made the crash. I don't know that I think it's easy to find and then learn about and adopt a whole nother master story.
Great. It's easy to go there, maybe not so easy to feel fulfilled there. Maybe not so, it may not be comfortable at first. I agree with you.
But it's comfortable to some people.
It's comfortable to some people.
And so it's the new thing.
Yep.
And
The new thing,
people should be allowed to progress.
for sure. Absolutely. Good. New knowledge, new learning, new community, new people, new input, new challenges. Like, wow, those are big upsides. Downsides, you're getting at some of the downsides.
The question is that if it appears to you and you're upset about it, you still have to learn what's possible, because if there's people who are choosing something else, there's nothing wrong with me, but I'm thinking there's something wrong with them, but you might be wrong. It's just necessary to keep the progress moving.
And what I think you're both also getting at, remember hypothesis number 2 of this theory? Every master story will ultimately and inevitably crash. And this master story that you've jumped into will also crash. Crash. And you're going to have to jump off of it into another story, and on and on and on and on. Yes?
Number 2, does it give you more options, though, to choose from? Because you're sort of starting anew?
Does it give you more options? I think so. But I think what you're also intimating is that you're losing, maybe, look, our stories are not things we carry in suitcases. We are embodiments of our story. If you're Jewish and your Jewish story has crashed for you, you can't easily put your Jewishness down. It's in you. So when you go option 2, you've lost a lot. And there's a way in which you're Jewish, but you've lost your story. You've lost your community. The definition of option 2 is you've left behind the values, the structures, all the Jewish stuff. That's a lot of loss. But there's a lot of opportunity here. How many option 2s are there in the world? A ton, right? Each of which has a piece of the story that ours didn't have. So there's a lot of good to be gained. Go ahead.
So, all right, Jewishly, what I choose to follow and not, like kashrut, etc., is that option 2? Because I've given up some of the things from option 1?
Again, option 3, and we're getting there. Yeah, here's an example. Okay, I'll get personal with you. Hang tight. I grew up in Skokie, Illinois, with these wonderful folks in the 1960s, and I learned that everybody is straight. All people are straight. And when I was 16, 17, I started to realize that I was gay. Crash. My first reaction was, oh, no, that's not true. I'm not gay. I'm straight. I want to be straight. I went out on lots and lots of blind dates with guys. I went to the movies with them because then I didn't have to talk to them. But I wanted to perpetuate at least the illusion that I was straight to my parents, if not to myself. Well, that's a really dangerous path. And I was very fortunate that at a certain point, before I died, I met a woman. And I fell in love with her, and she fell in love with me. And I realized the moment she kissed me for the first time that love is love. And that's before it was a meme, okay? And I ran, not walked, from option 1 to option 2. I dove into the queer subculture. That was my option 2 land. And there's something about going option 2 on something big in your life that is almost contagious. You start realizing that other things that you thought were true aren't true, and you start going option 2 on a bunch of things.
Doesn't it give you control?
Say it again?
It gives you control.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. When you leave option 1, you start to be sort of proactive in choosing a better, what you hope will be a better story for you. Hang on one sec. I'll get you. By this point, I was 19 years old, and I had wanted to be a doctor all my life. Remember? Yes. And at this point in my life, I thought, oh, that's what my parents wanted for me. That's not really what I wanted for me. And I stopped being a pre-med student, and I became an Italian literature student. And my parents had a really hard time with me being a lesbian, and I had a hard time with their having a hard time. So I left home, and I moved to Japan. You cannot get farther away from Skokie, Illinois than Japan, Tokyo, Japan. And I went option 2 on geography there, right? I went option 2 on relationship, how I think of human beings. Option 2 on geography. Option 2 on my career. I landed in Japan, and in short order, I became a very devout Buddhist. Option 2. And then I became a shoemaker. Again, you can't get farther from being a doctor than being a shoemaker. Option 2, option 2, option 2. And I'm here to tell you, I lived there for a decade. I was very happy. Happy, happy, okay? Option 2 is happy, happy place. Happy, happy. For a while. I was free of all of the voices that told me God doesn't like you, because I knew that was a crock of shit. And the Torah says you're bad. I knew that was a crock of shit. I rejected all of it. I was very happy not to fight those fights anymore. Now I'm a Buddhist. Buddhists aren't homophobic. Buddhists don't have misogyny. Of course they do. Anyway, I was happy there for a while. Yes and yes.
So my point is, when you're moving from any place, whichever way you go, you take yourself with you.
Yes.
And as much as we want to think that we can leave all of that behind me, as you say, you were happy, right?
Yes.
But you were still there
Yes.
with everything that comes with it.
Yes.
So people decide, I don't like to live here, so I'm going to move elsewhere. Great, go to move where but you're still taking yourself with you over there, and it all happens all over again.
Yes. For good and for bad. Absolutely. And I brought my Jewish self with me to my Buddhism. And I brought all those things with me. And eventually, when this started to crash for me, and I realized that I didn't feel whole as a spiritual human being, and that maybe I was born a Jew for a reason, and that something was missing in my life, I had a lot to bring to option 3, which we'll get to in just a second.
So I was wondering if you first go from option 1 to option 2, once you've done that, I'm guessing it gets easier and easier to do as more and more circumstances.
Yes, that's a really important point. The more you move from option 1, I'll say that any other option, 2 or 3, the easier it gets. I'd back that up and say the more crashes you experience, the more crash flex, resilient you become, and you become better able to more consciously and healthfully choose the right option for you.
So there are opportunities.
They are opportunities. Yes, absolutely. And sometimes the right opportunity is for safety. If you're 14 years old and you come out, or coming out is going to mean getting kicked out of your home by your parents, option 1 is the right move for you. If you are in an abusive relationship, option 2, get out of that relationship. That's the right option, right? So, depends on what time it is. Depends, option 1 might be right for a while. Option 2 might be right for a while, etc. Yes?
Before you go to option 3, if you look at Jewish history throughout the centuries, it seems like there are certain societies that wanted to keep the Jews in option 1.
Yes.
No escape, no way out,
Yes.
no way to get to 2, no way to get to 3.
Yes. That's very
How
interesting.
has that impacted psyche of
Yeah.
Jews today?
Wow. Did you all hear that question? That was a really good question. What you're bringing up for me is the ways in which we have trauma responses, right? To threats, or to changes, to crashes. We're going to get to Zionism soon. But I think you're making a really important point, which is when you're a minority and you live in a majority culture, the majority culture, I think this is your suggestion, tends to put you in a box. This box. The box of, this is what we think you are. And this is what you need to be. And we're going to judge you and treat you based on what we think you've been and what you just permanently are. And in that issue, you're getting at something important. Option 1 and option 2 are opposite sides of the same wrong-headed coin. They are both responses to the fallacy that master stories are fixed, unchanging, eternal, immutable. That's the message we all got. I don't know if you're my age or so. When you learned about Judaism, you learned this is our story, this is the Torah, it doesn't change, You can't change it. You can take it or leave it. Okay? So, option 1 and option 2 both believe that master stories are fixed, perfect, immutable, unchangeable, such that if something crashes that story, you either have to suppress the crash to maintain that delusion that the story is still intact, or you say, that completely crashed my story is a complete failure, and I'm going to get rid of it. Chaval, unfortunate, both of those, yes.
So I want to challenge your comment about the Torah being fixed.
Yeah.
Through a lot of Talmud is JTS.
Yeah,
That's full of variations of interpretation.
yeah, that's what I'm here to say. What I'm here to say is, we teach our kids and sometimes speak from the pulpit about a tradition that isn't actually the way the tradition is. And it wasn't until I began to learn Talmud that I learned how the tradition actually works. And then I started a school, a yeshiva, to teach people how it actually works so that they could all roll up their sleeves and start playing with the tradition to option 3, it. Okay, let's go to option 3. Let's throw Jewish history over this. So, Benay, what does this have to do with Judaism? I'd like to suggest that the biggest crash in Jewish history happened in the year 1939. I don't know if that was the biggest crash in Jewish history, but I won't argue with you, for sure. Yeah, I'm going to go back to the Second Temple. And I think 39 became a revisiting of this experience for a lot of people. Okay, 70. In 70 of the Common Era, the Romans destroyed the Second Temple. Why was that such a big deal? Why was that such a big crash?
Because it was integral to the religious practice.
That was Judaism.
That's right. If you were a biblical Jew, which is what you were in the year 69, the only way for you to have a relationship with God, the only way for God to heal your mother or forgive you, these are big things you want from God. You want forgiveness, you want healing, you want health, right? You want rain. You want your crops to grow. The only way to get those things was to go to a temple. Because at that time, we, along with every tribe in the ancient Near East, believed that God lived at that temple. Not across the street, not in another city, but in the temple. And the only way for you to talk to that God and get all those goodies with God was to do the temple sacrifices, to do the rituals. No temple, no God. Everybody knew that. We weren't the only tribe with a temple and a God in that temple, and everyone knew when your temple goes down, no more God. God doesn't love you anymore. Or God doesn't exist. That's big. That's big. But I want to crank the clock back 1 year. Not 70. Let's go to 69. 69, things are looking bad for the Jews. It's like Romans 853, Jews 3. Okay? Looking really, really bad. Who's going option 1 in response to this imminent crash? Who's going option 1 in the year 69? 69 is before the temple was destroyed. Who?
Temple is there, that is the option one.
Okay, great. Okay, so the only way to stay Jewish is to go option one. The people most invested in staying Jewish were the ones who got a paycheck from being Jewish. We call them priests. Okay? They got their groceries, they got their salary from their job at the temple. Raise your hand if you're a Jewish professional. Okay, all of you with your hands up. You get your paycheck from the master story. I'm here to say that it's very difficult to be anything other than an option one person when your paycheck depends on the master story. Just be careful, okay? Okay. So who's going option one? Priests. Priests are going option one. And they are fighting to the death for the temple. It's a kind of, in addition to a financial matter, a failure of imagination. They can't imagine any other way to be a human being, a Jewish human being, than to have this temple and to relate to God in that way. So they're going to fight to the death for that way to have God. And they did. P.S., they also built a wall around the temple. It's kind of interesting that the temple's not there anymore, but the wall is. Something about walls. Right? Okay, how did that work out for them? Not so good. Have you seen any priests lately? No. There are no more, effectively, no more temple, no more priests. So that went down. That did not work out well. Temple goes down. Who's going option two? Option two is, I'm out of here. Who's going option two in the year 70? I used to think it was Christians. I don't think so. Not yet. I don't think so. We're going to come back to Christians. We're going to come back to rabbis. Option two is, I'm out of here. Are you ready for this? Put your seatbelts on. 95% of Jews went option two after the destruction.
They went or were taken?
Went. This is not about being taken into Babylon as slaves. This is about being a very logical, reasonable human being. No more temple, no more God. No more God, no more Jewish. And they assimilated. Option two is assimilation, folks. They assimilated into the pagan surrounding culture. 95% of Jews in the first century became pagan. You know why so many people go option two after a crash? Because that's what people do. Most people go option two after any crash. It's over. It's over.
But sometimes they find out it's not.
Yes. Sometimes they can hang out here and find out it's not. Okay, option one, option two. There was a small group of queer. I'm winking because I want you to know that I'm being playful with that term. What I mean by queer is someone who is on the margins of the power structure, who's on the margins of society, who knows some truth that they walk through the world to try to make the world better. Go ahead.
I hadn't thought of this at all before. My grandfather was in Russia, and he had no choice to be able to be Jewish. He was put into the army. When he somehow found my grandmother, who came from a Jewish family, it was arranged marriage, and he learned to be who he just went along some religion, thank goodness. But so, this is very meaningful to me.
I'm so glad. If you scratch the surface of your life, you will find that you have had, and your family has had, many crashes. At this moment, you're all sitting here in this room, you are going option 1 on some crash in your life. You are going option 2 on some crash in your life. And I'll bet you're going option 3 as well on some crash in your life. So this little group of queer, fringy, radical, hippie guys said in the first century, well, option 1 that's a no-go. In the year 70, it was already over. In a way, they had the advantage of not having a synagogue on every block to say, maybe that one will be better. Maybe that one will be better. Maybe I'll like that one better. There was only one temple, no more. Okay. I can't even go option 1. They said option 2, that's a chaval. That's just, there's so much good in our tradition still. I don't want to give up the good stuff. And so they went option 3. What's option 3? They said, yes, that crash happened. Yes. And I'm still working on this part. I'm not sure. I think I'm having a 3-dimensional, 2-dimensional whiteboard problem. But there's something about looking at the world around them. I haven't figured this part out yet. They're taking with them things from the culture around them that they've had exposure to, being marginalized people, that worked. They revisit those animating questions. Why are we here? What does it mean to be human? How should we live our lives? Is there a God? What's right? What's wrong? How do I love? How do I feel safe? They went back to the master story, took what still worked, even without a temple. There's a lot that still works without a temple. Honor thy mother and thy father. Can you do that without a temple? Yeah. Do we like that? Yeah. That's some good shit. Let's take that. Let's keep that. And they retold the master story. They made a new story. New story. That's called option 3. And those guys, we now call them the rabbis. Yes?
So I guess what this means is like the Christians did that too.
Aha! Yes. Okay. Now's where the Christians come in. Because after a crash, the queer, fringy, radical, hippie guys, they don't just create one new master story. There are lots of groups of marginalized outsider people who don't want to give up. And they all come up with their own new story. And that's what you want. After a crash, you want as many option 3s as you can get. Because some of them are going to be stupid. But some of them are going to be really great. And some of them are going to have pieces that later you're going to want to integrate. One of these, option 3s in the first century, started by a different group of small, queer, fringy, radical, hippie guys, Jewish guys, is called... Who are Jewish, of course. Called Christianity eventually. Okay? That's Christianity. Okay.
What's your descriptive word for option 3? Is it growth, renewal? What one word?
You know, it has a Hebrew word. The Hebrew word is midrash. You've probably heard the word midrash. But I'll bet you thought it just meant a story. Doesn't just mean a story. Midrash is two things. It's the mechanism, the process of coming up with a new piece of a better master story. And the outcome of that process is called midrash. But when you hear or learn a midrash, you need to ask yourself, what was the crash, the prior crash, that made this story necessary? And this story a better addition to our new Jewish master story. That's midrash. I don't know that I have a good English term for it. I don't know, is it interpretation? Is it? Adaptation. Oh, adaptation is nice. I like adaptation. Yes?
But there were already people before 70 who were already writing. There was.
Okay, I'm going to share my paycheck with you. I'm going to share my paycheck with you. Okay? Because you are just feeding me pieces of this story.
Because there was already a Talmud being written in the land of Israel, and then of course they took the Talmud and rewrote it in Babylon. So those people were already around.
Not only were those people already around, they were already gathering in these like newfangled little communities, like these hippie communities, and gathering in these little ashrams. You know what they called those? Synagogues. Yeah. And the steeples come later, but it's the same idea. They were inventing new ways to invoke God that didn't need a temple. You know what that was called? Prayer. Okay? You know, the whole Baruch Atah Adonai, they invented that shit. Okay? They came up with these ways to convince themselves and one another and the rest of the Jews, so that they wouldn't go here, that there were ways to have God in your life. There are ways to still be Jewish. And you're quite right. Option 3, people don't spring out of a crash. This is very important. When we ask the question, what time is it today in 2025? They are hanging out before the crash in a period of time that I'm going to call the crumble. Those rabbis were hanging out for over 200 years in these little ashrams that they called synagogues, when they could have gone to the temple down the block. They could have gone to the temple. But they were over it. They no longer believe that if you stand knee-deep in blood after slaughtering the animals, and that God's going to come. They're like, no, that doesn't work for me anymore.
And actually the change came even before that, when
Yes.
sacrifices were no longer being children and people.
Yes.
But switched to the animal sacrifice.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Okay. We're going to come back to the crumble in a minute. This new story, this new Jewish master story that these rabbis came up with, it would have been unrecognizable to a biblical Jew. You see what I did there? And most Jews didn't go along with them because they said, that doesn't feel Jewish to me. Oh, on Shabbat, I should have challahs at my own table, not the showbreads for the temple? No. That I should say wordy things? What, it's like, It must have sounded to them like Jack and the Beanstalk. You know what I mean? Magic beans. You say these magic words, God will be there. Who's going to believe that? Oh, last year we sacrificed our lamb in our courtyard for Pesach, and this year we're holding up a piece of matzah. And this is our Paschal offering. Really? That's a bunch of crap. And most Jews said, that's a bunch of crap. You made that shit up. I don't think that's real. It doesn't feel like Judaism to me. So I'm out of here. But a very small number of people said, I see what you're doing. I know what you're up to. You made that up. You're inventing this. It doesn't feel Jewish to me, but it will to my grandchildren, so I'll come along. Those are your ancestors. If you're Jewish, if you're sitting in this room right now and you're Jewish, no matter how you became Jewish, those were your ancestors. You're Jewish because those people said, doesn't feel Jewish to me, but doesn't work for me. But it will for my grandchildren. And they had a pretty good run. Well, let's put some numbers on it. In the first century, when the temple stood, there were 8 to 10, according to Josephus, 8 to 10 million Jews. 8 to 10 million. 500 years into the newfangled Judaism that we now call Rabbinic Judaism, 500 years later, you know how many Jews there were? 500,000. 500,000. Because it wasn't working for most Jews. Most Jews were like, hey, on Shabbat, you bring this sacrifice. If you can't do that, it's not Shabbat. I'm out of here. This is in the nature of early option 3. It's going to get small. But that 500,000 had a good long run. 2,000 years, not bad. Rabbinic Judaism has lasted and has had an enormous impact on the world for 2,000 years. Pretty darn good. But I would like to suggest that in the last 150 years, it has been crumbling. And we've had an entire new round of option 3s. In the last 100 years, what have the option 3s been that have responded to the crash of enlightenment, emancipation, freedom for Jews, America, the Holocaust? What are the option 3s that have come out of that? First one was Reform Judaism. Thank you, Reform Judaism. Very first option 3 in the modern era. Second one, Orthodoxy. Don't let anybody tell you that Orthodoxy is the tradition and Reform is the deviation. Orthodoxy is as option 3 to Jewish tradition as Reform. Conservative, Reconstructionism, Zionism. Who said Zionism? Bravissima. Zionism. A new way to be Jewish where all you have to do is believe in the state of Israel. You don't have to keep Shabbos. You don't have to keep kosher. You don't have to believe in God. You don't have to be religious at all. Very attractive to a lot of people. And I'm here to tell you that all those option 3s are crashing for large numbers of Jews today. Ask your children and your grandchildren. Yep.
Is it relevant that all these things are crashing, but then all these things outside of Judaism are crashing at the same time? And that causes it and
It's very related, right? We are living in a time where virtually everything is crashing. It's not a coincidence that our belief system, that our traditional structures are changing. Tiny example. Jews are wealthier on the whole. I'm not saying there's no Jewish poverty. On the whole, especially in America, we have more freedom, equality, and wealth than Jews ever imagined throughout Jewish history. Let's look at one of our Jewish practices that we inherited. That Shabbos table, where you have 2 challahs. Do you know why you have 2 challahs on your Shabbos table? Blah, no. I don't think so. Here's why you have 2 challahs on your Shabbos table. Because when you cannot afford 1 challah on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, which was the state of Jewish life for 2,000 years, we were poor. Having 2 challahs on Shabbos gives you a sense of, a taste of the world to come, a taste of, I can be hope. I can be a person of dignity and honor and respect. And you can remind yourself that you are a valid and worthy human being. That's why you have 2 challahs on your Shabbos table. Now, when you're poor, that works. When you're so wealthy that you could have 12 challahs on your dining room table any day of the week, is that particular spiritual technology of 2 challahs on your Shabbos table working? No, it's not. So people aren't going to the tradition they inherited to do the things we need done because they no longer match, they no longer fit, because we've crashed, we've become different in so many other ways. Yep. I'm going to wrap up real soon because I'm already a little over. Go ahead.
Well, it's also the idea of a lot of our rituals are commemorating events that happened in our life.
Yes.
The 2 challahs thing was
Yes.
they collected 2 portions of manna as we were going through the desert so that they wouldn't have to do it on Shabbos.
Yes. Okay. So what you're talking about is that a lot of our practices have a kind of memorial function. If they only have a memorial function and we don't have practices that are actually making us, feel like challenging our morality or pushing us to be better human beings, then we're crashing, right? Last point. Those queer, fringy, radical, hippie guys who came up with that rabbinic Judaism that has lasted so long, their core innovation, what I'm going to say is the rabbinic revolution, was that they invented the idea that if you want to know what's right, what's wrong, how should I live my life, where can I go to know how to live? The rabbis had one answer to that. They inherited a tradition. The biblical tradition gave us one answer: the Torah. That was the only source of God's will. The only way you could know how to live was the Torah. The rabbis invented a new way that they said is equal to Torah. Equal to Torah. Not only is it equal to Torah, they said if the two conflict, if these 2 sources of truth conflict, ignore Torah. And this new idea they invented is called svara. It's an Aramaic word. That was the vernacular at the time. And it means moral intuition. It's what your kishki tells you, what your inner voice tells you, based on your life experience. And the richer your life experience, the more you have contact with and deep understanding of different kinds of people, and understand the nature of relationships in the world, the better your moral intuition is, and that's called svara.
Does everyone have their own moral intuition then?
Yes. They said every human being was born with svara. And you can refine and grow your svara by expanding your experiences and by learning. If you are steeped also in the values and texts and ideas of the tradition, it grows your svara. That's why I started a yeshiva called Svara.
So are those who act not in a good manner, are they uneducated? Are they, what is the,
Who they?
well, I think the guy that just shot the woman in the face,
Yeah.
right? And so what is the explanation then? If everyone has moral intuition,
Some people have like little hickory nut moral intuition. And some people have really
they're just dumb? I mean, is that what is the opposite?
maybe it would be better if I said we all have the potential to grow that sense of being able to make better and better guesses at what God wants, what's right. And you have to do things to grow that svara. Learning is one of those things. Being open to people with different ideas is one of those things. And yeah. I'm not claiming we should all follow our own moral intuition. I don't think, like, if there are 50 million Jews in the world, we should have 50 million Judaisms. But I think we're all actually obligated to bring our moral intuition to bear in order to make the tradition better.
What do you do in this day and age when maybe, I mean, it sort of goes back to a question somebody had over there about how all the stories are crashing?
Yeah.
And maybe that's a sign that the concept of a master story is crashing, and maybe
Yeah.
people don't want a master story anymore?
Yeah. That's a really interesting question. I have to think more about that. But off the top of my head, one thing I know is that one of the problems with master stories is they always leave some groups of people out from the get-go. So if you're going to keep your master story healthy and growing and changing, you have to constantly be asking, who's not here? Whose voice is missing? Who am I forgetting to think about? And I think it's called a master story for a reason, right? It's a problematic term, but I think the term indicates one of the essential tasks to keep the master story growing.
I wanted to piggyback to echo that, since that could
to be
Yes.
completely disillusioned with everything to that effect, which can explain why some synagogues have low membership,
Yes.
have a very high average age of member,
Mm-hmm.
because younger people don't feel that they are being franchised, included, heard.
Yes. 100%. And as option threes start getting more and more robust, the reaction of option one folks to those will be more and more violent, because the option one folks will be more and more threatened. Our government. Okay. Yes.
So you've mentioned parenthetically at least a couple of times that you started a yeshiva.
Yeah.
That's not a minor thing. Can you
Yes.
tell us just a word or two about where it is and who the graduates are? And
Sure. Sure.
By the way, on your way out on the table, there's some literature, some cards you can take with you.
Yes, thank you. So pick up a postcard, learn about our yeshiva. I started it 23 years ago. And it initially was for queer folk. And my idea was that, A, if the queer folk who have been pushed out and alienated from the tradition realize that their tradition actually has this notion of svara in it and has been in a process of change. Master stories, if they live more than a dozen years, are always changing. But option one people are trying to sell you the idea of stability and unchangingness because it's attractive. It's not true, though. And I thought, okay, if I can show these queer people that the tradition actually is really smart, has always had a radical willingness to overturn Torah and to change, they might trust it again. And they might bring the svara that the tradition needs, that they have in spades. Because if you are queer in a heteronormative world, you have a lot of good stuff. You have a lot of confidence in your truth, willingness to lose a lot, to stand up for what you believe, to live the life you think is right, and you know a lot about human nature that the mainstream needs to know. So, but the tradition acknowledges you can't have really great developed svara unless you are deeply learned and learning. And so the yeshiva is the place for the folks who have svara in spades to get the learning they need, to roll up their sleeves and responsibly mess with the tradition to make it better, to go option 3 on it. Even if it will inevitably be unrecognizable to us. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Thank you all so much. To be continued. Thank you so much. I think I have another 5 minutes or so if you have any comments or thoughts. If you want to get in touch with me, do so. Benay at svara.org. I'd love to be in touch. Thank you, everybody. Hi.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed your talk. I don't think anybody would argue that we're currently in a state of crumble.
Reyes, I agree.
Give me some hope.
Oh, there's so much hope. I'm sorry. I didn't put enough hope in tonight because there are a lot of option 3s that have happened in the last 25 years where young people are finding a Judaism that's really exciting.
I have 2 Christian grandchildren.
Uh-huh.